Hi, I'm Don. Welcome to my channel. I'm an affiliate painter for Redgrass Games and also the head mecha and sci-fi painter for Vallejocolor. I write painting articles for Fine Scale Modular Magazine. I also write articles for Fantasy Figures International Magazine. Lastly, if you're into Gunpla, do use my discount code for usagundamstore.com. Links down below. Today we brush paint some Vallejo metallics. They're a bit different to paint because some of the paints here are or were formulated for airbrush use. We start with Game Color Teeny Tin. Game Color and Model Color metallics are very creamy, so shake them well, and also you have to thin them at least 1:1 with water or thinner, and then mix well. Watch until the end of the video as we will summarize the whole brush painting with metallics video. Also, we have now, the videos now have a tip time. So watch until the end and I'll share some tips at the end of this video. I say this all the time, 2 heads are better than 1. So basically 2 thin coats or even 3 is much better than 1 heavy coat. The teeny tin is not our actual color. I actually really love using the teeny tin, the very dark, like what color is this? A copper, very dark copper color. This is our base color for the copper later. Also, I use this paint as base color for golds way back when I used to paint like miniatures, when I started painting miniatures with TMM stuff. So this is my base color for all my metallics. Notice that I did not repaint the details in black. So the usual practice is to paint it gloss black or just black, and then that will be the undercoat for the metallics. I don't do that, especially for copper and gold. I just paint with teeny tin and it works just as fine. I brush painted the teeny tin in 3 thin coats for all the copper pieces, copper armor pieces and details. So after the 3rd coat, it's really nice and glossy. So you'll just let it dry. Make sure to let it dry. Let the coats dry in between coats. So basically I use a hair dryer before applying a 2nd and 3rd coat. Now we brush paint MAQUINA Metallic Blue. The MAQUINA range were formulated for airbrush use, so this is thinner than the Game Color and Model Color paints. So as you can see, it's really thin, so you don't need to add water. You don't need to really thin it. Just use a very wet brush and then mix it a bit before using it for brush painting. You may add a bit of flow improver to retard the drying time of these metallic paints, but we're painting tiny pieces or parts here, so I don't really need to retard the paint because it won't dry out on me. So also paint in thin coats. Do not restrain yourself from painting in 1 heavy coat because this color is really nice. The coverage is really good, but restrain yourself, so paint it in 2-3 thin coats rather than 1 heavy coat. I don't show it on video, but make sure to use a hair dryer or basically just let dry in between coats so that you have a nice smooth finish, and again paint in thin coats. The Model Color Metallic Blue and this one, the Mecha Color Metallic Blue, are really great paints. You should find a way, or you should find a reason to get them. I mean, find a project that you could use them because they're really nice. The coverage is very good and the vibrance of the blue is very nice. Some people, basically miniature painters, rave about the metal color for brush painting because simply they are the best. So basically they're so easy to paint with, both for airbrushing and brush painting. So you don't really need to thin them. Semi-wet brush, the brush has a chamber with water anyways, so you don't really have to thin them and then paint them directly on the model. But again, even if the metal color has really good coverage, make sure to at least paint them in 2 thin coats instead of 1 heavy coat. Same with the other metallic paints. You could use flow improver to retard the drying time a bit, Also, when you retard the drying time, you will produce a smoother finish because you're letting the paint like settle down as it dries slowly. As I mentioned earlier, the tinitin is just our base color for the copper. Now we use Vallejocolor copper. Same with the metallic blue, do not thin this paint. It is already pre-thinned for airbrush use, so just mix it with a wet brush and you're good to go. Notice I added a drop of copper again because I over-thinned it with water. You never over-thin metallic paints because the binder and the metallic pigments will separate and it's nasty. It's going to be nasty. I was planning to use model color copper, but I can't find my bottle of copper. So we're using MAQUINA copper. It's easier, or I mean, it's not easier. It's as easy as metallic blue. The coverage is really good. You don't have to thin it. Just just use a wet brush. We all use a wet brush anyway, so no thinning. And apply in 3 thin coats rather than a heavy coat. I think I applied the copper in 5 very thin coats. It's not thinned, the paint is not thinned, but I applied it in 5 thin coats to produce a really nice smooth finish because the pieces are a bit large. I don't want people to see brush strokes, which is nasty for bigger kids. So it's easy to like do TMM on miniatures because they're really small. But this one, because the pieces are big, that's why people tend to like prefer masking and then airbrushing than brush painting metallics. But if you paint them thinly, you'll produce smooth and very nice finishes. Now it's tip time. This is the first video that has tip time, so here we go. First tip, fat brush, fine tip. So the fat brush has like a reservoir of water there, so you won't have drying of the brush, which is nasty for metallic paints. The fine tip will let you paint tiny bolts and details, but the fat reservoir will keep the paint wet. I'm using a number 2 Kolinsky red grass brush here. It has a really fine tip, but it's really fat. Needless to say, this brush is my workhorse. Next tip, don't use a wet palette because the metallic paints will contaminate the foam and your wet palette with metallic particles. If you have a synthetic brush that is fat and has a fine point, that is better for metallic paints brush painting. I simply don't have that, so I prefer my red grass. The last video of this series is the weathering of the whole kit, and do subscribe to my channel so that you won't miss the upload of that video. That's it, we're done. I hope you liked the video. Do like, comment, subscribe, and consider joining the channel so that you'll be part of our Discord community. Saludos! I am Don. Welcome to my channel.